Hi guys, it's Shammer with Happy Living Now and welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm showing you how I use Dollar Tree frames, picture frames, to create a wall shade lamp. So here I have my 3.5 by 5 inch picture frame, and of course we're gonna remove the glass on the back end. As you can see, the frames have a few scuff marks and scratches, so I will be spray painting those in gold later on. So now that I've removed the glass on the back end, it's time to remove the little pins that hold the frame back in place. Now you want to be careful with this, because if you go in a little bit too rough, chances are you may crack the frame, so be gentle as possible. Now I've removed all my pins at the back of the frame, and here are my frames with all the pins removed and freshly spray painted in gold. And for that I use Rust-Oleum metallic gold spray paint. Now the next step is to replace the glass back onto the frame, and of course I've cleaned off my glass. So to do that, I'm going to use some adhesive that I purchased from the Dollar Tree, as well as my hot glue gun. And there you see I'm replacing the frame, and I'm just going to apply some light pressure onto the glass to make sure it adheres back to the frame. Be careful, don't apply too much pressure. Again, you may crack the frame, but just apply light enough pressure that you're sure that it does adhere back to the frame. Okay, my glass is back in place, and the next step is I'm gonna use these stone gems that I also purchased from the Dollar Tree, and I'm gonna line those up onto my glass in the order that I want them. I found it easier to do it this way than just go ahead and stick it one by one. That way I know for sure that everything is fitting on the glass the way that I want it to, and when I'm done I just go in and stick everything in place. So now that I've fully laid out the way that I want my gems to look, I'm gonna go in again with the Dollar Tree super adhesive, and I'm gonna apply just a little bit of that in the center of the stone gem, and I'm gonna use my hot glue gun and go around the perimeters of the stone gem to add hot glue. Now be very careful. This hot glue gun was very hot, so I burnt my finger quite a few times just by merely getting glue onto my hands. Like, this glue is hot, so be very careful when doing this. Okay, so all my gems are in place, and I also did the same thing for the next two frames, because for this lampshade we are using 3 frames total. So I did the same thing for the next 2 frames, and the next step is to go ahead and add some hooks. So the other 2 frames already have the hooks. I'm just putting that last frame on top to make sure that it properly aligns with the other one, and I'm gonna go ahead and mark where I want to insert my hooks. Now I think I did the hooks about 1.5 inches apart from each other. So I've marked where I want my hooks to be inserted, and I'm gonna go ahead and use my soldering iron to just give a slight hole into the frame. Again, you want to be gentle with this, so I'm not pushing my soldering iron too far in. I'm just pushing it just a little bit so it melts it enough that I have enough space to be able to screw my hook into. And what the hook is going to screw into is Once everything cools down after I've used the soldering iron, the hooks are pretty simple. They're gonna screw right back into that frame, the part that got melted but hardened. So I'm using these very tiny eye hooks that I purchased from Amazon, and everything that I use in this video will be linked down in the description box below. And so because they're so tiny, I'm using 2 pliers to prop them open. As you can see here, they're very tiny. So I'm using the help of 2 pliers to prop them open before I insert them into my frame, because I'm gonna need that part opened because of the gems we'll be adding on later. Once I have that open to my desire, I go ahead and just screw it right into the frame where I previously inserted my marks. Okay, now the frames are ready to be glued together. So what I'm doing here, just turning over my frames, I align them in a row, and what I found was one of the frames was a bit shorter than the other 2, so I kind of used that in the center, and the other 2 ones that were similar lengths went on the sides of that centerpiece. So I'm just aligning my frames to make sure that they align properly. And of course, I also had to prop up my frames to make sure they stay in place, so that when I glued them together, they also stayed in place. And again, I'm using my super adhesive and my hot glue gun to go ahead and apply the 2 frames to each other. And of course, I'm just making sure that they're properly aligned and that they're straight. Now that that's all done, now it's on to the next frame. And again, I'm doing the same thing, just aligning properly to make sure that the frames properly align. And I'm gonna go ahead and seal that with super adhesive and hot glue gun. Okay, now the frame is all set, the glue is all set, it's time to move on to the next step. So I purchased this adhesive diamond tape from the Dollar Tree as well. And so what I'm doing here, I'm just gonna go ahead and measure it to the length of the frame that I want. And I'm gonna cut that out and go ahead and glue that. Now, although it is self-adhesive, I found that it didn't really stick as well as I wanted it to, so that's why I'm using the help of the hot glue gun. All right, so we're almost there. The frame is pretty much 3/4 of the way done at this point. So the diamond wrap has been added to the frames, and I did that on both sides of the frames just so that I could hide where the frames joined. Now I'm gonna go ahead and use these screws that I also purchased from the Dollar Tree, and I'm gonna use that to mark where I want my frames. Now you could use common hooks if you want, but I found that the frame or the lampshade turned out to be pretty heavy, so I'm using hooks instead, or nails. And I'm just measuring 1 inch from the top of my frame down. Then after I marked my 1 inch, I'm gonna go ahead and place the head of my screw in the center of that line, and I'm just gonna go around and mark that so that later on I could form my hole for my nail in which the nail will slide in. So as you can see here, I've marked the top of the nail as well as the size of the length of the nail so that I can use my soldering iron again to create the hole for my nails. And I created that little part. I measured the length, the size of the length of the nail, because I don't just want my lampshade to sit on top of the head of the nail. I want that when I put it on the head of the nail, it's able to slide down so that the nail actually locks in place into the frame. So that's why I did that. As you can see here, I slide my hook in and it fits right in, tight and snug, just as I wanted. So I went ahead and did the same thing on the other side, and now it's time to add these chandelier drops that I also purchased from Amazon. They were pretty heavy. I didn't think that they were going to be that big, but it turned out to be okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and add those onto the previously opened hooks that we added onto the frame. And I'm closing those after I've added the gems or the chandelier drops. I am closing the hooks with pliers. And this is what the lampshade looks like after I've added all the chandelier drops. It's looking pretty, but we got one more step, and that's to add it to the wall. So to get my lampshade ready for installation, what I did was I placed it over my wall lamp, and I went ahead and marked it where I wanted the top of the lampshade to be. Then I measured 1 inch down from the top of that measurement, and then I drilled my holes. I inserted my hooks, or my screws rather, and then I went ahead and placed the lampshade onto the hooks. And as you can see here, I struggled a little bit to make sure that it was securely over the hook and that the hook was actually in the hole. And then it went in right there. It slid into place, and there you have it. This is what the lampshades look like on my wall. Again, you could use common strips for this, but I chose nails instead. I loved how this turned out. They turned out so pretty on the wall. Who could have thought that I could use items from the Dollar Tree to make a beautiful wall lampshade? Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this, and I will see you guys next time.